All right, strap in everyone, because today's deep dive is a fascinating one. We're going into the dynamics of modern parenting specifically, the roles of moms and dads.
The research you sent over, it's eye-opening. It really digs into what kids miss when they're dad deprived.
Exactly. And not just that, but the societal shifts that play a role too. So we're going to break it all down, hit those key points, and really see what it all means. Ready to dive in?
This research is often overlooked, but it reveals so much about families, expectations, especially how we raise boys. It's fascinating.
It really is. Seems dads are more likely to actually enforce those bedtimes, even if they're later.
Right.
And then it talks about dads and risk-taking, like that whole tree climbing thing. What's the takeaway there for our listeners?
I think the big takeaway is those different parenting styles. Moms, more often, they're focused on immediate safety. Dads, they seem to encourage calculated risks, almost like they're subconsciously prepping kids for the long haul.
Building that resilience.
And the research makes a point of saying this isn't about right or wrong parenting, but about recognizing the strengths both mom and dad bring. And how a lack of understanding about those differences, well, that's where the problems can start.
And that makes me think of another point the research made. Dads turning everyday things into games. Like that dad who turned grocery shopping with his kids into this challenge.
He had them looking for the cereal with the least sugar. Turns out that's a perfect example of what the research calls dad language, using play, humor, a bit of teasing to get those life lessons across.
Exactly, and it highlights how dads can make learning fun, even in the most mundane situations. The research emphasizes how important it is for moms to understand this dad language, too.
Why is that?
Without that understanding, those playful teases, those challenges can easily be misinterpreted, especially by moms who often communicate more directly.
It's true that could lead to some misunderstandings.
Exactly. The research touches on this idea that without a strong, loving bond, kids might see a dad's teasing as bullying. That bond is crucial.
So true. It's like that foundation of trust makes all the difference in how those interactions are perceived. It makes me think about those classic father-son camping trips, building Lego together, those shared experiences.
Those are the moments when really strong bonds are formed,
Yeah.
away from the digital world.
It's that simple power of presence, like the research mentions.
Such a powerful insight, and it leads us to a more serious aspect, the impact of dad deprivation, especially on boys. We'll get into that more after a quick break.
What's really striking is how this research connects dad deprivation to these broader societal shifts.
The recurring theme throughout the research, how societal changes, often well-intentioned, might be putting boys at a disadvantage. Like the decline of vocational education, right? We had shop class, where kids could build things, learn with their hands. The research links that decline to some of the struggles boys are facing today.
It does make you wonder, by taking away those opportunities for boys to thrive in a more hands-on way, we've limited their options.
It's not just about bringing back shop class. It's more about recognizing how boys often thrive in those environments. Practical skills, clear expectations, that sense of accomplishment from building something tangible, and maybe a little less time sitting still in a classroom. Because the research actually links the reduction of recess time to some of the problems boys are facing.
We've forgotten that for a lot of boys, physical activity isn't just burning energy, it's crucial for how they think, how they manage their emotions. That quote from the child psychologist really resonated with me. Taking away recess to improve test scores is like throwing out the engine to make the car lighter. So insightful.
And speaking of analogies, the research uses a thought-provoking one when it talks about the impact of the toxic masculinity narrative. It argues that in trying to dismantle those harmful stereotypes, we might be sending the unintended message that masculinity itself is flawed.
It's a delicate balance, for sure. It's crucial to challenge aggression, dominance, those harmful aspects, but we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Right, because strength, courage, being protective, these are all parts of masculinity that, when they're channeled in a positive way, are incredibly valuable. The research actually uses that story of the teenage boy. He's afraid to even talk to his girlfriend about gender equality because he doesn't want to be labeled as a woman hater.
It highlights the fear these mixed messages can create in young men. They're being told to reject who they are without any clear alternative.
Exactly. And that leads us to, I think, an even more complex part of this research, this whole idea of dad's rights.
It doesn't get talked about enough, not in the bigger conversation about parenting and gender roles.
Well, the research uses this phrase, multi-option woman, three-option man, which is basically saying that women have so many choices. Careers, family planning, even whether or not to become a parent, men's options often feel limited.
It's true, and that feeling of limited agency can lead to frustration, resentment, even hopelessness.
Especially with that societal expectation that men are still the primary breadwinners. Like they're trapped, expected to provide financially, but then criticized for not being emotionally present enough.
That tension definitely comes up a lot in the research. And then there's the issue of fathers being excluded from the decision-making process when it comes to family planning.
Yeah.
Political candidates were advised not to talk about the importance of fatherhood.
Really?
They were told it might alienate certain voters.
That's interesting. It's almost like acknowledging how crucial fathers are is seen as somehow threatening women's rights, which is ridiculous.
It's a false dichotomy. And it shows just how badly we need to move past this mom versus dad mentality and see that for children to truly thrive, we need both parents fully engaged, both voices heard.
We can't keep framing it as one side winning and the other losing. It's about finding a way for everyone to win, especially the kids.
Couldn't agree more.
It really is about moving past this idea that one gender's gain has to come at the expense of the other, when in reality, true equality benefits everyone involved.
Absolutely. We've got to get past those zero-sum game scenarios and then really embrace a more nuanced view of gender roles. It's about acknowledging the challenges both men and women face, but without treating them as mutually exclusive. We can work towards a future where both can thrive.
And while we're on the topic of challenges, the research delves into a particularly sensitive one: the difficulties fathers often face in the legal system, especially when it comes to custody battles and parental rights.
It's an area where there's often a real power imbalance, and the research doesn't shy away from that. You see those stories that fathers who feel like the system's against them, having to fight just to be involved in their kids' lives. It's heartbreaking.
And it's not just the emotional toll either. The research points to the financial burdens, too, preventing fathers from being as present as they want to be. Legal representation, expert witnesses, it all adds up, making custody battles feel almost impossible for some.
Absolutely. It's a complicated issue, no easy solutions. But the research does suggest a really interesting approach, shifting towards a model of shared parenting, where both parents are presumed to have equal rights and responsibilities from the start.
Starting from a place of assuming the best of both parents.
Exactly. Prioritizing the child's well-being above all else. It's not a perfect system, but it's a step in the right direction.
And that kind of shift requires a pretty fundamental change in how we view fathers, doesn't it? Moving away from that outdated idea of dads as just breadwinners and seeing them as those essential figures they are.
We need to value the unique role fathers play and foster a culture that empowers them to embrace fatherhood fully.
It's clear that the roles of both mothers and fathers are evolving, and the research you brought to the table highlights those complexities.
It's not about clinging to some idealized past, but about going forward with a clearer understanding of what we're facing. Recognizing that when we support fathers, when we value what they bring to the table, when we empower them to be the best dads they can be, everyone benefits.
It's about creating that win-win scenario for everyone involved.
Yeah.
What's one final, thought-provoking question they can take away from this deep dive?
As you reflect on everything we discussed today, consider this. How can we, individually and as a society, create an environment where both masculine and feminine energies are celebrated? Where those differences in parenting styles are seen as strengths, not weaknesses. And most importantly, where children are raised with the love, support, and guidance of both a mother and a father. It's a question worth thinking about, discussing, and hopefully acting on.
Absolutely. A powerful note to end on. So much food for thought today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.